So I wanted to make a video about the importance of having a clear decision-making process that you can both articulate and that is simple to use regardless of the type of decision you need to make. This is important because the quality of our decision leads to the quality of our life. If we make bad decisions, they may likely lead to a life that we don't want for us. On some level, given that we make decisions every second of our life, we do know how to make decisions. The thing is, most of the time we don't know to articulate how that process is for us. If someone asks you today, how do you make decisions? If you know the answer, that will put you in a state of control, in a state of that no matter what decision you need to make, and no matter the level of complexity it has, no matter the level of impact it has, you're all set. Because you have a process that is reliable, and no matter what, you can follow through and find what is the right decision for you given any circumstances. When someone thinks about the decision-making process, generally they think about frameworks. They think about processes that are overcomplicated. They think about an element of structure that needs to be brought to the thinking process. All these work. However, depending on the type of situation you're in and the type of decision you need to make, you might find them to be more easy to follow or harder to follow. Thinking about the decisions that I had to make throughout my life, and especially the ones that had what someone would say a high level of risk and impact, I found that they all took a different level of energy, time, and effort. When I started thinking about the ones that looked pretty much the same on paper, like for example, the career changes I've made throughout the past 10 years, I started noticing a pattern, especially by looking at one career change that I made, and that took just a few seconds. And that pattern about the decision-making process is actually quite straightforward. And I believe now that it stays the foundation of any decision-making process. What is that pattern? And actually, it is not just a pattern, it's also the process that I believe now the decision-making process is about. If you think about a jigsaw puzzle, and if you were to think that a decision is just a jigsaw puzzle, all you need to find the right decision and to have it clear in front of your eyes is to have all the information required for the decision available to you. And also it has to be connected into an image that is clear and makes sense to you. When we look at the completed jigsaw puzzle, we can easily see what it reveals. When there are missing pieces in the jigsaw puzzle, sometimes we tend to guess and think, okay, maybe let's say this jigsaw puzzle reveals a landscape, because all you see is a landscape. However, if you were to fully complete the jigsaw puzzle, you would find that there is also a house in there. There might be some people in the image as well. So then the answer to what the image reveals is different. That's what's actually happening with the decision too. When we have clarity on the decision, it's very easy for us to tell what that decision is, why that decision makes sense to be that particular one and not another one. It always leads to flow, to ease. You don't struggle to follow with the action that the decision should lead to. You don't have doubts. Everything is crystal clear, basically. Now the question is, okay, what type of information I'm talking about when it comes to what a decision requires. I'd categorize information into two types. One is external, that can be the thoughts of other people, knowledge, wisdom, perspectives, skills, anything you're learning from external sources. The second type is internal information, and that involves your own internal thoughts and feelings about the decision and about how you relate to the decision. It also involves your values, your belief system, what matters to you, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it can happen that, let's say, someone tells us to consider a specific information as part of the decision, and then something feels conflicting. Many times that happens, that when we introduce that information into our mind, it clashes with other information that we have already about decision. And that information we already have about the decision might be something we have at our front of our mind, or it might be that we have to find out what information the one we just received conflicts with. So now going back to what I just shared, that in my eyes the decision-making process is just a process of gathering information and connecting it into an image that makes sense and is clear to you. I found that every time when I had to make a decision and I started overthinking it or started feeling worried about the negative implications the wrong decision might lead to, going back to this fundamental principle about the decision-making process always put me on track. And mainly because instead of focusing on what can go wrong, for example, I was focusing on the actual decision-making process. This principle about what the decision-making process involves, meaning just gathering information and connecting it, also gives a structure and a purpose to the thinking process when thinking about the decision. Because when you go into the decision-making process and you already have a goal of finding out, is it a missing information that I need to deal with? Or is it a wrong connection I have to deal with? Or even a missing connection altogether? Then your mind is much more focused on the decision-making process because it knows to treat any information as something that needs to be dealt with. It's true, sometimes that information can also be noise. Sometimes the information that comes to our mind about decisions is just a distraction, and we need to know when that's the case. But regardless, our thoughts, our feelings, and what they communicate to us is information to be processed and considered in the decision-making process. Even the negative implications of a decision is actually information, and it can be quite valuable if we use it as a validator against which we check our decision. Because if you think of it, if you look at the decision and you see that it leads to the negative implications that you were already foreseeing, that means the decision you made is not a good one. It's as simple as that. So that's why I say nothing that is in your mind needs to be disregarded unless it's noise, and then you realize that's the case. Now, it's true, we do get stuck in the decision-making process. We do this at different stages in the decision-making process. That can be at the very beginning, when we just found out we need to make a decision, all the way till we actually made a decision, we actually acted on it. Something happened, and now we doubt that we made the right decision from the very beginning. And that stuckness can manifest in different ways. Some people overthink, some people get anxious, some people get withdrawn, and so on and so forth. So now, sharing all this, I think all I want to say is having a decision-making process that is clear and simple to follow will help you with making sure that anytime you need to make a decision, regardless of the type of decision, you're in control. You're in control of the process of how the decision is made. You're in control of the decision and how it plays out. You have a say how you show up in the decision-making process. You have a say in how you want others to show up in the decision-making process. You own the decision. And owning the decision means you're actually intentional about how you want to show up in your life. So when you live from a place of intention and you want your actions to align with where you want to be in your life, scrutinizing the quality of your decisions becomes a norm, and you do want the decisions you make to fully align with who you want to become as a person and what you want to achieve in your life. And because you want to make good decisions, you also want to be efficient, because there's an element of effort, energy, and time that is involved when decisions need to be made. And sometimes being stuck on a decision affects what you need to do next in your life, either professionally, personally, socially, so on and so forth. And when that happens, you then realize, oh, I do need to have a decision-making process that is simple, clear. I can rely on it regardless of the type of decision I need to make. And that's when this principle I just shared about, that lives behind the decision-making process, the fact that the decision-making process is just a process of gathering information and connecting it into an image that makes sense and is clear, becomes valuable and becomes information that you can use, is practical. It will help you remove you from places of overthinking, from doubting, worrying, and so on and so forth.